And it comes
Yeah,
not
that's good.
from an aviation background, but from, more of a background of management.
Yeah. And I think when people recognize you can say all those things, and it doesn't mean much to the folks working with you or for you until they see you back it up. So once they recognize that you're genuine about that, then it does change the game. And then from an airline perspective, I mean, it's one of those deals where it does get more difficult as you get more separated in those leadership roles, because you're further away from the folks on the ground that are grinding, the technical experts. And that's kind of what your young aviator is trying to do. He's trying to become a technical expert in our case, the weapon system, or in this case, a Learjet or whatever aircraft they're in. You definitely want to be a technical expert. But as you roll up into those management roles, some of those programs where they, go out there and sling bags with the guys on the tarmac and the girls, and if they're finding out the gate agent's role, standing with them for a day, figure out what issues they're dealing with, customers in their face. Just gaining an understanding of that goes a long way, because then they can speak to it and say, look, I've gone out and done these things, and I've seen some of the struggles. And then you build some credibility to say, I want your input and I want your feedback, because the way we're going to get great as a company isn't going to be from a bunch of middle, high level management folks coming up with great schemes in an office. It's going to be insanely good ideas that come from the ground. We used to say that with, I'll segue to a kind of a larger picture. Just an interesting observation over 25 years. And you mentioned the Ministry of Defense. So I got to see a couple of cool things. I got to see the Afghan Air Force and Army and their leadership structure. Of course, we were heavily influencing that. However, some of those senior generals that I was advising were Soviet era war generals. And so a lot of them actually got their education, if they went to a war college or something like that, was in the Soviet Union. So it was this top-down leadership piece. But the Afghan soldiers modeled that. So if you would see, for instance, if a young soldier were to question anything out in the field, you might hear stories of, no kidding, a senior ranking officer or somebody coming over and physically striking that individual, right? That you're not going to ask questions or question anything that's going on here. It's top-down leadership. Wow. And brutally so in that case. And then segueing over to, I was in Australia, and we had a class. I was fortunate enough to go to a school there where we had 25 Aussies, 2 exchange officers, myself, and 1 Army colonel. And then the other 25 folks represented 17 different nations. One of them, which was the PRC Army colonel from China. So I immediately had to study up my history, because he was rolling in on me on Taiwan and various other issues that he was upset about. But so I quickly studied up on my history. But what dawned on me over the course of the year with, his name is Bai Wingman, the Army colonel from the Chinese Army, that they're also a highly top-down directive force. They promote people that have extraordinary intellect in memorization, because they want them to repeat what the party line is, and they want them to be good at it. They aren't asking them what their opinion is. They're asking them to spout the Communist Party line. So for instance, in Afghanistan, if I was asking a brigadier general, we think that you should do these helicopter operations this way, they would say, I can't make that decision. It has to be the 3-star. We'd ask the 3-star. He'd say, it's not my decision. It's the Ministry of Defense decision. Ask him. He'd say, it's not mine. It's the president has to make that decision. Wow. So what they weren't getting is kind of what you were tapping at with that leadership piece. The difference in the United States Air Force and all military branches, that they can never understand, and what makes us so much better, in my opinion. We graduated airmen out of tech school or out of Lackland Air Force Base, and he doesn't have a stripe on his shoulder at all. And he's going to follow orders, because somebody's going to tell him that he has to do X, Y, Z. He's going to do it. But along the way, he's going to say, yes, sir. But we encourage him the whole time to ask questions, to ask, why do we do it this way? Because we care if he came from the farm fields in Nebraska, or if he's a descendant of Japanese grandparents, and they do things a certain way, and they think that they question it because there's a different way that could be perhaps better. We want to know about it. And the same thing with a butter bar second lieutenant, just graduated, and he's working for whoever, flight commander. Yes, you're going to follow orders, but you are highly encouraged to ask why. Why do we do it this way? So we're essentially asking for a hugely diverse set of opinions and understanding and input to try to make our operations better. It's something that can never be understood in that top-down Soviet or top-down Chinese leadership style. So I think that's our asymmetric advantage by far. So.
Yeah, it sounds like it has a lot to do with, instead of toting the line, has to do with what's right, what's just, what's moral, what's correct, versus.
Well, that's a great point too, because told. I mean, yeah, do you believe in the cause that you're fighting for, or are you being told to do it and at risk of not following orders?
Yeah, yeah, and it's fantastic that you can explain it that way. A lot of, I think, civilian pilots that it used to be a time where, in your job interview at a mainline carrier, they wanted to know is who was your CO, and what unit were you deployed with, and now the way things are in this country, most pilots now are coming through civilian ranks. They've gone to a flight school. They've flight instructed. It used to be they were hauling canceled checks around in newspapers and things, and now that those jobs really are few and far between. And you're very fortunate if you can find a private job flying a jet around, because those jobs are also few and far between, and because they're sought after. They're fantastic opportunities. So most people, I think, go through the flight schools. They go flight instruct for a couple of years. They build their time. They get on with a regional carrier or maybe a 135 carrier first. And their end goal is to get to mainline. So you have all these pilots that are flooding the system here in the United States, that only a small portion of them, of the newer pilots, have this military experience, have this kind of knowledge and background. And sometimes that creates a conflict, because then you'll have more experienced pilots on the flight deck that came from that military background, and they're looking over going, this guy or gal is spoiled, rotten, egotistical, arrogant SOB, and I got to deal with this person for 4 days.
Yeah.
So I've always seen kind of this difference of attitude. How do we combat that attitude? How do we convey to a pilot who came through a less experienced, a less organized, leadership focused background that they would get from background in military or aviation, and they're coming up from a flight school and they think they're God's gift to aviation, and they look at you like you're a knucklehead because you're calm, quiet, and you're picking your battles, and they're over there spouting off at the mouth.
Sure. I think the airlines have some responsibility to be choosy about who they're picking to get in these positions. But I mean, who do you want to fly with? I agree with that. Like the military, you do need to become a technical expert as you go, but kind of building that mentality that you are also the future of this airline, and you have an instructor responsibility in a positive way, right? So it's just, who do you want to learn from? Do you want to learn from somebody that is a dashboard pounder, and saying you're doing it wrong and doesn't explain why, or somebody that's encouraging and say, hey, great job. There's a couple of different ways you could look at that, and teaching and instructing as you go, and trying to build the next captain in a positive way, and encouraging them along the way to ask questions. And really, if there's no captain out there or FO or former military that has all the answers in aviation, there's too much knowledge out there for everybody to know it all. And you have to keep working at it. So it's a great way for a captain in the left seat to take on that mentorship role, be encouraging, be positive, be a positive role model for whatever airline they're working for, and honing their own skills, right? So if you're asking some random questions that are something that they haven't looked at, let's look at it together and let's learn this thing. Let's make you a good captain. So it's a positive attitude, I guess. And and understanding that the cause is a little bigger than yourself. It's not just you sitting there to earn a paycheck, although some may or may not think about it that way. But you are representing a larger company, and I'd look at it as a service as well. Like I consider the military service, but in a different way, the airlines are too. We're bringing those people to important events in their lives, and so I think that is a service that not every country can do that. You can buy a ticket and go to somebody's retirement. You can go to somebody's, whether it's a funeral, a wedding, something that's an important event in somebody's life. And so it's a service in that way. So I think with that mentality and the idea that you're there to mentor and teach and make people the best they can be, the safest pilot they can be, it's good for everyone.
Yeah, I always get a kick out of, and I learned this lesson early on, probably 15 plus years ago, when I was a new hire at a regional and sit next to a captain. And the first time I heard this, I honestly didn't know what to think. And the pilot next to me goes, "They should just cancel this flight so I could just go home."
Yeah.
What? Is there something wrong with the airplane? Is there? Why are you saying this? Oh, if they cancel the flight, I can just go home. I go home and get paid. I'm pay guaranteed. And you look at them, and the first time I heard this, I honestly was in shock. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know if he was joking or not. But this is a common thread. Anybody at a 121 carrier that has had any experience has flown with this person, right? And you sit there and you look. And my favorite is, when I was a captain, I was sitting there and I couldn't tell you how many times I heard that exact thing come from my FO. And I would sit there and go, well, if you don't want to be here, that's fine. I don't want you to fly if you're not in the game.
Mentally ready to go, yeah.
If you want to call out sick, go home, call in fatigue, whatever you want, I'll back you up. I'll support you for your decision, because only you know if you're fit for duty. But if it's my understanding that we make money if the company makes money, and the company makes money by transporting people, like you said, to important events from point A to point B. That's our job. We're scheduled, so we have do our best to leave on time and get them there when they think they're going to get there.
Yeah.
You don't want to be here, stay home. That's fine.
Exactly.
But don't come into work and sit there and say, oh, they should cancel this flight, or start looking for reasons to cancel the flight. Oh, I found something wrong with the airplane. Really? What is it? There's a placard missing. Okay, well, why don't we just call maintenance and MEL it? Oh, it's a no-go item. How do you know that? Well, I know all the no-go items. Wait, what?
Yeah.
So I appreciate you saying that. It's definitely an attitude